That's okay. Oh, there we go. I was going to say, I can talk really, really loud.
All right. Good. Yep.
How's everybody doing tonight? We'll see if we can keep it that way. Okay. If you have a Bible, turn it to Romans, please. Chapter 12, and we will take a look at verse 2. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you a story. And it's going to be a riveting story at that. Romans chapter 12. Bear with me a second here. I have to give myself a timer because we could go long. Okay, everybody ready for a story? I'm going to tell on myself tonight. That's always fun, right? Okay, so this story plays into what we're going to talk about tonight. And if you're familiar with Hebrews 4:12, it says, "For the word of God is living and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit and of joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart." The reason that I'm going to tell on myself tonight is because of the fact that God has made me who I am. The word must cut through me first. Okay? If you are a man, if you are in a place of leadership, the word must cut through you first. Okay? So, now, we're going to get to the really good part. I tell this story for two reasons. Number one, to show that that word is true. Number two, to let you know that what we're going to talk about tonight, no person in here is immune from what we are going to talk about tonight. Every single one of us struggles with this. Every single one of us is in a different place. But be assured, we are all on the same path. Okay? All right. So first, I was not going to preach about this tonight. I had a sermon all ready to go. It was going to be Hebrews 10. We were going to talk about sin. We were going to talk about the crucifixion of Christ. Everything was lovely. At 3:30 in the morning on Tuesday, God woke me up and said, "This is what you are going to preach." And basically ran a sermon through my head for 2 hours. So, if you don't like what is said, don't blame me. Okay? Now the story. Monday. Today's Wednesday. Monday. I had a guy at work call me up on Monday. And he is in a situation where he has a customer that is being pretty tough. And the guy has gone hostile on us. Okay? So he's telling me what the guy said, what he's demanding, all this other stuff. The guy's being completely unreasonable, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the conversation, I told him, I said, whatever you do not allow the behavior of somebody else to dictate how you behave. Guess what I did that evening? I let the behavior of somebody else dictate how I behave. Okay? So, my wife and I were having a conversation. She brought something to me. I don't remember the details behind it. And I guess that really doesn't matter. What really matters is what I did, how I reacted. So in the midst of her trying to tell me something, so I did something that's classic for me, first of all, and that is I interrupted her and didn't let her finish. The next thing I did was I saw an opportunity to tell her about something that she had said or was doing or whatever. It was like I was going to shine this great big light on what she was doing, and it was more of a, what would I say? Not a I told you so moment, but kind of like, aha, so you behave that way too. So guess what? You're getting this back, or something like that. Anyway. Not necessarily the right thing to do in that moment. But I did it anyway because when I seized the opportunity to, say something, I have to open up my mouth and say it. So then I went off to do what I had planned to do that evening in the garage. And while I was in the garage, God had something to say to me. He said, remember that conversation that you had with your coworker? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing my thing. I'm like, yeah, Lord. And he said, now you just did the very thing that you told the other person not to do. You see how easy this is? How easy it is to fall into that trap and not even know it. Okay? I took an opportunity to regress emotionally. I seized an opportunity that I should have let go if I was more Christ-like in that moment. If I had more control over my emotions in that moment, then I would have just let that go and let my wife tell her story and not said a word. Because ultimately, what did I gain? What did I really gain? I gained absolutely nothing. Okay? In fact, I lost something. I lost an opportunity. Okay? But God, being faithful, gave me an opportunity to make it right. So God said, now you have an opportunity to humble yourself before your wife and apologize for what you did. And not only apologize for what you did, but tell her why you're apologizing. Okay? So once I got done, I came back into the house and I said, I'm sorry for what I did because I made you responsible for something that I did. Okay? So now, I don't say that to say, oh, look at Ron, he did something great and all that. No. Actually, it was the opposite of that. I failed the first time. God gave me a second chance to make it right. But I had already done what I did. Okay? So at that point, it's an apology. Okay? And taking of responsibility. All right? Because I've asked God for something specific in making me a man. Okay? So, we're going to talk about this, and specifically what we're going to talk about is our minds, and what goes on in our minds, and particularly our emotions. Alright? So now, everybody's open to Romans chapter 12. I'm going to read verse 2. Some of you have already heard a version of this, but God is having us take a look at this from a different angle. Okay? So, Romans chapter 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Okay, pretty simple, right? All of us have heard that verse or a version of that verse at some point or another. Do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Have you ever stopped and thought about what that really means? Because it's pretty simple. I mean, it's a very simple command. Don't be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. What does that mean? Okay. So let me ask some questions. And we're really going to talk about this. So if anything I've ever done has been interactive, this is going to be more so. Okay? I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think about the answer. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about the answer in your mind. You don't have to blurt out an answer. You don't have to raise your hand, whatever. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do, but don't feel like you got to raise your hand or whatever. Just think about the answer that pops into your head the moment I ask the question. How often do you monitor your thoughts? Think about that. And for those of you that are taking notes, you might want to write these down because I did. And I'm not saying you got to be like me, I'm just saying these are things that we really need to think about because I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but there is something that God wants from His church. that particularly in our culture we are very bad at. And when I say we, I'm right there with everybody else. Okay. How often do you monitor your thoughts? That's question number 1. 1A is, or how often do you guard your mind? How often do you guard your mind? Is there a gatekeeper? That stops certain things from coming into your mind, that stops you from entertaining certain things. What do you fill your mind with? Psalm 119, I believe it's verse 37, that says something about do not meditate or do not look on or do not think about worthless things. Somebody wants to look that up and blurt it out, go ahead. I think I just butchered it. How often do you guard your mind? Because remember what we just read. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Before Christ, we probably did not give a whole lot of thought to what was going into our minds. We were probably allowing just about everything and anything into our minds, and we probably entertained just about anything and everything. And let's not even talk about our reactions, particularly to other people and what they do, or what we perceive they do. Question number 2. Do you give any thought to your emotional maturity? Do you even know what emotional maturity is? I mean, because there was a time when I didn't. I thought I was, if I'm 50 some odd years old, then, emotionally I must be 50 some odd years old. And if I haven't proven one thing over and over and over again, that's not true. Do you give any thought to your emotional maturity? And how many of those, and don't raise your hands, how many of us can honestly say, I either have some areas where I am very emotionally immature, where I may react like a child emotionally, or I have some growing up to do in just about every area? Remember the scripture, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And if you were to stop and think for a moment, from as far back as you can remember, think about how we react. Think about how we react to things. And how some of our reactions form a pattern in some areas. And when we came to know Christ, we were spiritually reborn, but have our minds been renewed? All right, now the questions are going to become more penetrating. How do we react when life situations get overwhelming? And what overwhelms us? I mean, what overwhelms me is probably different from what overwhelms you. I may come completely unglued over something, and you might look at me and like, dude, what's the deal? Right? How do we react when someone calls out our bad behaviors? 57 years old, and I am just now learning not to completely lose my stuff when my wife calls out my bad behaviors. Side note, be careful what you ask God for, because you're going to get it.
Right.
Okay? So if I ask God, if I go to God and I say, God, I want to be a man. I want to be a real man. I want to be what you call a man. Immovable, unshakable, not a robot, but a man. A man like Christ. In the face of persecution and slander and insults and all of the nasty stuff that everybody tried to do to him, he stayed the course. He did not utter a single word to anybody who was mistreating him. He did not come to his own defense, but he did defend others. His harshest words were for the religious leaders of the day because of how they were treating his flock. So don't think for 1 minute, men particularly, don't think for 1 minute that if you don't defend yourself, that makes you look weak. I wish I made this up, but I didn't. I've heard a saying about Jesus. You know, Jesus was humble and he was meek. But I've heard this saying before, meekness is not weakness, it's power under control. And this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about being able to control our minds, control our emotions, more importantly, control our responses to people. Jesus said, the world will know that you are my disciples by the way that you what one another? The way you love one another. I believe that's John 13, 34 and 35. We're called to be different. We're called to treat each other differently, right? And who are going to be the people that are going to get in your grill and just pluck your last nerve? It's not going to be somebody you hardly know. It probably isn't going to be somebody who's unsaved. It's going to be that brother or sister sitting right next to you. And how you react to that person. Those are the people that Jesus was talking about when he said, the world will know that you are my disciples by the way you love one another. Not by the way you love the unsaved. Not by the way that you love your neighbor who, sees you once a week or whatever. So, it's easy for us to pull off some piety there, right? I mean, I can be the greatest person in the world to somebody that hardly even knows me. And I can look at people and say, how you doing? Love you. But you don't live with me. All right, where am I at? Okay, someone calls out your behavior. Actually, I asked a question of my wife not too long ago that I literally just got the courage to ask. And husbands, I would challenge you to ask your wives this question, because then you will get a true picture of who you are. Now, grant you, I've been married to my wife for almost 19 years, and I literally just got the courage to ask her this question not long ago, several weeks ago or whatever. And that is this. And ask anybody that knows you, right? When you look at me, what do you see? And hang around for the answer. if I can muster the courage to ask somebody that really knows me what they see when they look at me, I have put myself in the perfect place for growth. That make sense? No? Yes? I don't care? Yes. Okay. All right. Next question. You thought we were done. We're still on number 3. I got about 14 more to go here. How do you react when someone tells you what to do? Depends on who it is. That's an honest answer. Yeah, I guess, we're cooperative when we feel like God's telling us what to do, but then when God puts someone in authority over us and that person tells us what to do, we maybe have a different view on that. But I'm more concerned, really, what goes on in our minds in that moment. Because we're going to go somewhere, and I'm going to ask one of this question is coming up, and I'm going to hold it till the end because all of these other questions will set this last one up. How about this one? How do we react when someone takes something from us? How do I react to being told I'm wrong? How do I react when I perceive that my rights are being taken away from me or they are being violated? Because in this country we have all kinds of rights. Right? Let's go back to Jesus. How did he react when his rights were taken away from him? Don't say it, just think it. Just think. I really want you guys to meditate on this stuff. Because everybody in here knows how he reacted. Okay. Got all those questions written down? All right. Turn in your Bibles to Genesis. Chapter 4. We're going to read verses 3 through 8. Everybody's familiar with the story of Cain and Abel, yes? Okay. Let's take a look at the story from a little different perspective, okay? What did I say, verses 3 through 8? In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry and his face fell. If you are so inclined, please either highlight or underline that part right there. So Cain was very angry and his face fell. In that moment, what try to put yourself in Cain's place and try to think about what Cain was thinking in that moment. So in the King James it says God respected Abel's sacrifice, but he had no respect for Cain's. God accepted what Abel had to give him, but not Cain. Now, the Bible doesn't give us a whole lot of information on Cain's sacrifice other than it was whatever he pulled out of the ground. But we have to wonder, was it the best of what he had? Verse 6, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry and why has your face fallen? God sees what's getting ready to happen here. And God is asking Cain a very simple question. Why are you angry? It's kind of like the question that he asked Adam. Where are you? God knew where Adam was. But maybe the question is more like this. Where are you at right now? Yeah. So now he's asking Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen? So Cain was visibly displeased. Verse 7, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. In the New King James, it says its desire is for you, and I think it says you must master it, or maybe it might use the same term, you must rule over it. Okay. So Cain is angry. So God presents a simple question. Why are you angry? He wants Cain to really think about, with his mind, think about his mental state right now. Why are you here right now? Or it could be the exact same question that he asked Adam. Where are you at right now? So think about all these questions that we asked in the beginning. Okay? How do you react when somebody, tells you you're wrong? Or how do you react when somebody tells you what to do? Or how do you react when somebody calls out your bad behavior? All right. I would say the majority of us probably get angry. We immediately get offended, right? So then, why are you offended? Where are you at right now? Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. So we found out where Cain was. Cain was in such a bad mental state. He was so offended, hurt, whatever you want to say, that he saw no other option than to kill his own brother. Now, when people offend us, we may not necessarily kill them, or maybe we do. Maybe we do it in our minds. Maybe we begin to hate them. And what did Jesus say about hatred? If you hate somebody, then you're guilty of murder. So we're probably all murderers in here. Has our mind been renewed? we been transformed by the renewal of our mind? Or are we still behaving in the same ways that we did before? And if we are, what's the disconnect? Now, I'm not saying that you have a moment of conversion and then all of a sudden everything is, rainbows and puppy dogs and you're off to the races, and then God says, okay, you're good, come on up. We are left here for a reason, probably more than one. One of those reasons is for our sanctification. Because isn't God more interested in our holiness than our happiness? Because what is happiness? Happiness is a result of happenings. Right? Somebody can walk up to you and pat you on the back and say, give you some compliment or give you kudos for something that you did yesterday or something like that, and you're walking about this high up off the ground. Right? Or somebody can say something derogatory, and the next thing you know, you're ready to kill them. And maybe sometimes we spout something off that we can't take back. So how did we get here? How did we get here? Well, I'll tell you how I got here. As a teenager, I was in a situation where I made a decision. And that decision dictated most of my adult life up till now. I spent so much time making sure I had what I wanted and that I was comfortable. I avoided not conflict. No, definitely didn't avoid conflict. What's the word of it? I avoided discomfort. Okay? Anything that was emotionally hard for me to deal with, I stayed away from. But what does Christ call us to do? James says, count it all joy when you suffer persecutions, right? Paul has a lot to say about persecution and tribulation in our lives and what it does for us, right? If we persevere through that, we get stronger, don't we? I mean, if you're an athlete, okay, or you want to be an athlete, let's say you want to play football, okay? You're not just going to go put the pads on and run out to an NFL field and say, "Here I am. Where's my $5 million paycheck?" No. What do they want to see first? What's that? They want to see if you can play football, right? They want to see if you've been tested on the field. Okay?